dan walda ga yaro dan gwari kai a dan gwari ga yaro dan gwari amono abele amono kosimi ya amono abele ya amono aha kai ya what's the beauty of us.
And another thing I also want us to talk about, I forgot to mention that when we were talking about, when I was talking about its use in the society, I've always wondered why Hausa musical instruments or traditions, I would say, have less recognition in Nigerian contemporary music. When you look at the Igbo traditional music and how it has influenced the contemporary music in Nigeria, you see the use of ogene in contemporary genres like Afrobeats. You see the use of gongo and other traditional Yoruba music styles in more contemporary sounds. But then I don't think I've ever actually come across where mainstream artists or mainstream performers infuse or incorporate Hausa music tradition, whether it's instruments or singing style. I think it's just once. I think maybe Kiss Daniel last year. I've forgotten the name of the song. I think that's the only time I've ever seen mainstream musicians or artists infuse styles or traditional music from this part of the country into their sounds, unlike what we see with the other top guns. We've even seen a do traditional music with Shaggy Poppy. Why do you think this music or tradition from this part of the country does not have that recognized appearance on mainstream Nigerian music? Any thoughts? Yeah, yeah, Ikechukwu.
Well, I might be wrong, but I feel that it could be that the songs are not that popular compared to the high life or even the Apala or the from the southwestern part of Nigeria and other genres. I feel that probably those artists or those songs were not from the northern Nigeria were not popular as such, are not well known. Yeah, I feel it could also be that probably there are artists who are doing that, but they are not really mainstream. They are just localized, probably just in the north. And maybe they are not that well known. That is why we are not aware of them. Apart from that recent song from Kiss Daniel, like you mentioned, who is more mainstream and as such we got to know about it. So I believe that could be an issue. Either the artists then were not popular, so not that well known, or even the artists doing that currently just localized within the northern area, and as such we've not heard about them.
That's a brilliant thought. Yeah, let's hear from Emmanuel.
Yeah. Thanks, Ikechukwu, for that thought. And the thing I would have to add is let's not forget that the way we listen is very much driven by our culture. The Hausa people do not enjoy so much of Igbo music. Igbo people do not enjoy so much of Hausa music and all that. The only one culture that people tend to like their music across Nigeria is the Lagos culture. It's not even the Yoruba music that people like a lot, but more of the Lagos mixed culture, which Lagos kind of is a cocktail of cultures from different places, from all parts of Nigeria, and therefore it kind of resonates with the rest of us. But music made elsewhere tend to remain very local just because of that cultural listening pattern. Another thing to note is music in northern Nigeria is generally overshadowed by the Islamic rule. And music in Islam isn't something that is really greatly celebrated. So it's kind of seen as over enjoyment, which Islam does not encourage. So I think those two factors play a role in how much of music from northern Nigeria makes it into mainstream. And in fact, because music is not greatly encouraged through religion or or discouraged in the religion, you don't see a lot of investments going into music production, and so music mostly remains very much local in that region. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you very much, Emmanuel Ikechukwu. Those are fantastic thoughts, I must say. The popularity of the artist, listening behavior of music enthusiasts, and the issue with, the restrictions from religion from that part of the country. Those are really, really valid points. And I don't know if anybody, Anu, do you have any other thoughts aside this that have been mentioned?
Thank you, Kosi. I think I quite align with Manuel and Ikechukwu on what they said. Brilliant, I must say that insight into why music, or will I say instruments in the northern region, has not found a stronghold in the mainstream music. I quite agree with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anu. Thank you, Emmanuel, and thank you, Kechu, for your contribution to the discussion so far. I kind of have another question, leaning again towards the significance or societal significance of this instrument. So I just want to know if there are any other role these instruments served in the community, in Hausa communities, aside entertainment. So let me give you a typical example. When you look at the Igbo traditional instrument, ekwe, the slit drum, it's aside being one of the main central instruments in Igbo traditional music, it also has some kind of conversational role, I would say. Conversational in the sense that it's used to, gather communities when in a typical Igbo community that they're trying to, gather the villagers to have a discussion or, a meeting. You always see the ekwe being played to, get people together. That's why people say, you always see ekwe na Akpo, that the ekwe is calling. So, you see that conversational role, and also it's also being used. I believe in the olden days, it was being used to, signal the villagers of an incoming danger or something like that. So, do you think the Gumi has serves another role in the community aside being just for entertainment? And
Um, well, you know, generally for the Hausa, I, I, I don't think it goes deeper than that, beyond praise singing. You know, why I say so is that because if we really want to look at it, burial rites for the Hausas, it's quite a solemn and a very immediate event. If a person dies today, if he dies before sunset, by 4 p.m. he's buried, unless it's at night and they bury him at first light the next day. So, and it's not something that you play music or anything. It's the usual prayer, rapping, and committing to Mother Earth. So, I don't see any traditional Hausa instrument actually finding, even including the gurmi, in how will I put it, in burial. Let me put it like that, in burial. So that's knocked out. Probably maybe ceremonies aside the praise singing, maybe ceremonies to make money, just as Emmanuel mentioned when we're having the side talk before the podcast recording started, that if you go to the marriage registry in Abuja, you see them play for the newly wedded couple, so that they could get one or two, will I say, money from them, as compensation or as payment. So I feel strongly, maybe that's more of a contemporary use, but I feel that the Gomi would rather play a role in more of ceremonies and then also in happy mood. I'll put it like that. And then probably maybe occasionally referring to you saying that the what's their name? The Almanjeris actually use it also to beg. Maybe, and also if you look at it, if somebody's playing music for you, it's to make you happy so that you give them money. What else will you make? Are you supposed to? You can't play music for somebody to be sad and expect the person to give you money.
Yeah.
So I think that the gummy really is essentially is a happy tone. Let me put it like that. Though for Ajia Salamatu, it sounds different, but I think the gummy will be largely for a happy moments. I'll put it like that. So it now cuts across different ceremonies. We can now start pointing out probably birth, coronation, praise singing, wrestling, and all that. So that's what I'll say.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you very much, Arno. Thank you so much for that thought. I've also experienced the Almajiri performers in Abuja. In events, they are always there trying to serenade you to just dance and be happy and give them more money. I've not really thought about any. I've actually given it thoughts, but I can't come to you know maybe if I ask somebody else, but like you said, the instruments is a proper melodic, and it provides a very happy tune. So I think it's just for celebratory purpose, like you mentioned. Thank you very much, for that.
Yamuna bele, yamuna, aha, kai, what's the beauty of us? Double, wani da ga yaro dan gwari, kai, dan gwari, ga yaro dan gwari, amuna bele, amuna kosimi, yamuna bele, yamuna, aha, kai,
So, just as we slowly draw cut into our conversation for the day, I have just one last thought, and I would love to hear everyone's opinion and thoughts surrounding this topic. So, although not particularly proven, and definitely not in a cause and effect kind of way, I believe that the abolishment or suppression of the Bori music tradition helped in the prominence of these Asa music instruments that we see today. You know, the Gurmi, the Kontingi, the Kalangu. So this Bori culture is or religion is the pre-Islamic religion or culture of the Hausa people, before the institution or installation of the Sokoto Caliphate, which kind of deemed these traditions un-Islamic because they, practice animism and trance music and possession music. So this because of this belief or this animism practice, it made the culture to be abolished across Hausa land. And in this trance music, this abolished trance music of the Bori people, one of the instruments popular then was the Moro instrument, the Shagam that we talked about earlier, which is still also found in the current Hausa music traditions. Back then, it kind of provided a melodic accompaniment alongside the calabash, which served as the percussion during this trance music. So my thought generally is after the abolishment, they had to. There was a cultural space or a music traditional space that needed to be filled up. So they needed to find musical or alternatives to fill up this cultural space that was left by the abolishment of the Bori music traditions. That was how these instruments kind of aligned with the Islamic practice or Islamic teachings. They could be used in poetry, in praise singing. So it made it kind of socially acceptable, and it became part of the Hausa people. So that's just my thought, and I would love to hear what you guys think. Although it's just a hypothesis, I would love to hear what you guys think. Imano, what do you think?
I think you're correct, and cultures evolve, and one of the places where that is so true is in Africa, especially due to colonialism. A lot of things have changed. Colonialism by both people, the Arabians and Europeans, have greatly influenced our culture, and it's shown in our music and our heritage as well. I think you're very much uh, correct in your logic and analysis.
Thank you very much for that, Emmanuel. Anu, any thoughts?
Yes. Interestingly, there's a big question I still am yet to answer was that before the Islamic religion came, what was actually the tradition of the Hausa people? As in, it's very difficult to answer. I don't know if anybody, Emmanuel, I don't know if you have an answer to that. So really, I quite agree that I think the loss of their initial religion, or will I say their initial tradition, actually gave room for them to adopt the Islamic, will I say tradition as now their tradition outside it. Even the ones that are non-Muslims among them, even their dressing also, you look at the way they dress, they still have that particular Islamic dressing that they stick to. I have quite a number of friends that grew up in the north, down back in the south now. They still dress like that, and they are Christians. And I'm like, okay. And they said that's where I was brought up. I cannot wear native and not tie scarf and use a veil. It's part and part of the culture where I grew up. And most times we in the southwest will look at it and say, "Oh, this Hausa culture," but really, it's not. So I quite agree with what you and Emmanuel said. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very hard to see the Hausa tradition, um, outside of the region before Islam, or even outside of Islam, the actual Hausa tradition. But if you venture into the north, there are examples of still core people who've maintained their core Hausa tradition and way of life and music, even that as it were before the Islamic influence. One of the examples was, I think, in 2015 or thereabout, 2015 presidential election, I joined Nuhu Ribadu on a campaign tour in Adamawa, and we went to very remote villages where, and witnessed some traditional rites, chieftaincies, and traditional celebrations that kind of predates Islamic influence, and their way of singing, their way of dancing, the music. It was really very unique and not anything Islamic at all. So I think it still exists, but it's just been overshadowed by the Islamic influence. An example of one that's also very much documented is Jos, the Nok culture in Jos. Even though Jos is not considered wasn't an Islamic caliphate per se, but recently, I mean, it's hard to say that Jos is not in northern Nigeria, and the culture also in Jos right now. If you go to actual Jos, the culture in Jos is heavily influenced by their proximity to Bauchi, which is a very Islamic state. So they do exist. They are not well documented, which is always the case with everything African. We don't document. Um, so it's harder to see what's the actual Hausa tradition was like before the Islamic Caliphate.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Emmanuel, and also thank you, Anu, for the question you threw, and thank you, Ikichko, also for your contribution. Thank you, everyone, for your contribution to the discussion. It was a very interesting one, I must say, and thank you again for coming to today's session of the African Music Library Instrument Discussion.
Thank you, Kosi, for leading the discussion. It was really revealing, getting to know the different types of these instruments and how it relates to even up to Goji, as well as the griots-based instruments like the chorale. I didn't know there was those intricate differences with all these lutes kind of instruments. And before this class, if you asked me if I heard this instrument, I'll just say the same thing with what Damaria plays. But thanks. Now I know they are they are very much different. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Emmanuel. Anu?
Thank you, Kosi. Thank you, Emmanuel. That was a good conversation. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Anu. And thank you everyone for your contribution to the discussion on the Gurmi. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in on today's session. It was a good conversation overall. And please do not forget that this episode was brought to you by the African Music Library. Subscribe to our podcast on Just Play Music and follow us on our social media at AML by Just Play. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.
Amona bele, amono kosimi.